It's Kevin McCullough live from New York. Glad you're with us for AFA today. And very interesting discussion being held in certain regions of the country today because the NBC affiliate, WWBT of Shiner, Texas, is reporting that a 23-year-old man was let go by a grand jury of any charges in the beating unconscious of a man who was sexually assaulting his daughter on his ranch in South Texas. And in doing so, I just had a very odd thing hit my brain that said, well, wait a minute. Everybody looks at this story and goes, well, that makes sense. He was defending his daughter. But if you discuss the death penalty with folks today, it's very interesting, particularly in faith-based circles. People will say, well, you shouldn't be in favor of the death penalty because Jesus forgave people, so people deserve forgiveness. And if you put them to death, then they can't experience forgiveness. I'm not saying I agree with any of this. I'm just saying this is what they say. But what's the difference in the justice that you feel for the death of this man who was raping this little girl on sight when the father beats him unconscious and he ends up dying from his wounds? Why do we feel justice there, but in some way find it difficult to argue that in a court of law, if found guilty, the same man should be put to death? See, I think one of the reasons Ariel Castro committed suicide in prison is that he knew he deserved it. I think that it was pretty clear that what he did was unacceptable. But it is doubtful in Ohio that he was going to have the death penalty given to him. I mean, all he had done, quote unquote, he had done, was to kidnap girls and hold them hostage. But he had not taken any life, minus the forced abortions that he created by punching their bellies. In the eyes of the law, that's probably not even a death, depending on which state you're in. But in that situation, in both situations, I think the death of these men is more than justifiable. I think it's what justice demanded. But if we had said in a court of law, you've got to go and you've got to you're not allowed to put him to death via the use of the legal system, many Christians would have said that's the right thing to do. So I'm curious as to your thoughts. If there is a dichotomy here, or if I'm just imagining one. 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840. Let's go to Alicia calling from Idaho. Alicia, we're glad you're with us on AFA Today. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Alicia, and I'm from Indiana. And I am a biracial 31-year-old RN who was molested for about 5 years by my white grandfather, who, my father shot to death. A Mexican man shot him to death. I agree 100% with what you have said, that he deserves that. If you're going to take on that, exactly what you said, if you're going to take a hobby of raping children, then you deserve that. But my thing that I did not like or didn't understand why you were so adamant that he was a illegal immigrant, because before I was married, my last name was Carmona, and white, unfortunately, this happens in the world every day, and it's white people, it's black people, it's Asian people, it's, everyone. And I just didn't think it was fair to just assume he was an illegal immigrant due to his name.
Not just due to his name, Alicia. It has more to do with geography and has to do with the type of crime that was committed, because if you understand the felony populations of our federal prisons, the rates at which non-documented people, illegal immigrants, populate those federal prisons, you understand that there's a very high proportion between violent sexual crimes in border states and illegal immigration. And it doesn't really have anything to do with his ethnicity at all. It has to do with his location, his geography, and the type of crime that was being committed, because that is an especially high type of crime that is committed in border states along that area.
You're exactly right. That's where I lived in San Antonio, Texas when this happened to me. So I agree with you. I guess that was my only point.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you asking for clarification, because I have there's no ill will at all towards anybody of any ethnicity in Kevin McCullough's heart. But
Right.
when you pin it to South Texas, very near the border, and the type of crime that it was, and I don't know why in particular. I don't know why it's a particularly worse occurrence in those areas. The bottom 30 miles of Arizona is really bad. If you go from the border 30 miles north, statewide, you have all kinds of rape, pillage, murder, just the most insidious, insane, heinous stuff going on. And you've got our guys in D.C. going, no, we don't need to secure the border. So I don't get that. But thank you for asking for clarification on that, Alicia, and thank you for your call. Let's go to Rick in Texas. We're talking about this rancher that beat a man unconscious. He ended up dying from his wounds. You feel justice and understanding that he was simply defending. He didn't go out there with the purpose of killing this guy. He went out there to defend his daughter. The man ended up dying. We feel justice in that. If he had gone to court, there would be a lengthy legal argument about why he could or could not be assigned the death penalty. Is that justice? And if so, what causes the difference in the two scenarios? I'm very curious about that. Rick in Texas, you're up next on AFA Today with Kevin McCullough. Hi.
Hi, Kevin. I heard your comment about Ariel Castro regarding this, kind of related to this, and I thought about it this morning when I heard about his suicide. I kind of differ with you on his reasoning for committing suicide, even though he might have seen his errors. I think it was.
I didn't for a second. Hold on, Rick. I didn't say that he had seen the error of his ways. There probably was some degree of that he realized the whole time he was committing the crimes that he was committing. We always know when we commit sin. But there is a degree of justification that this is the right thing to do. And it's also, the coward's way out, as someone said in the news break. But, yeah, I'm not saying he was repentant or anything. I don't necessarily think that at all.
A hard heart. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
And they lose their consciousness of what's right and wrong eventually. If you do the same thing wrong long enough. But
you know what's interesting about that, Rick? When people do engage in sin for a long period of time, they may harden their heart on some level, but the minute like an authority shows up, the minute that a judge enters the picture, all of a sudden it's back to like there's an immediate awareness of, yeah, that was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. And that's why they go into defensive behavior. They run, they lie, they try to cover up evidence, whatever it is. There's this immediate recognition that, yeah, I'm in trouble.
It was wrong because he hid it all those years.
Yeah.
But in relation to the death penalty, there's a couple of things there to think about. One is the man was doing an immediate remedial action to try to save his daughter's life, and it was also, I guess, what you would call a passion crime. And then I'm not against the death penalty if it's proven, but at the same time, the death penalty is justice after the fact, they're kind of different in that the timing of the way things happen, I guess, is one way to think about it.
Well, I understand that, and on some degree, that's probably an explanation of how it happens in society. But at the end of the day, I don't know. When you molest little kids, that's one of those things where if I had my way, they'd be stringing from light poles in Times Square, and we'd put it on TV, and we'd say, "This is what happens when you do this. Don't do this." To further discourage people that may be inclined to do it in the future. There's a degree of justice. You feel satisfied. Okay, that father, and there's really no satisfaction that can fully be had because that innocence of that little girl is gone forever. Her childhood's over, effectively at that point. So there's no justice that can really replace what she had lost, but there is justice from the standpoint that the person who was doing it was punished, and in a pretty strong way. Why wouldn't we seek the same thing in the court of law? Why are there so many activists that say, no, this can't rise to the level of what's worthy of that? I mean, we talk a lot about wanting a just society, and I'm not sure we want one. That's the hard part for me to try to get my head around. We talk about justice all the time, but we don't. Our culture doesn't want justice. We don't want true equality for all, because if people demanded true equality, what that would mean is that we all suddenly become 100% responsible for our own actions. And there's too much of an industry of blaming others for why we do things wrong to really ever allow or to profit the idea of genuine individual responsibility from becoming a core value in America. I know a lot of people think, oh, that's what we're founded on. It was, but I'm not convinced that we have a country that loves genuine justice. If we did, we would have people calling racism no matter whose lips it comes from. If we did, we would seek to protect children at every turn instead of exploit them because of their vulnerability. If we really desired a world that was just, there would be so many things that would be so radically different. And so when people say, well, it's really up to God, God's the ultimate judge, especially as it relates to death penalty cases, I'm always like, okay, let's send him to meet him. Because ultimately the judgment, I don't believe, takes place in this life. I think the ultimate judgment takes place on the other side of that. And I'm sorry, Jesus loved kids and said just not to mess with them. And if I had been the same father, I'm sure something similar would have come out of me. I'm not proud of that. Whatever is necessary to protect my daughter, my innocent little 5-year-old daughter. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's talk to Margaret in Oregon. Margaret, welcome. You're on with Kevin McCullough on AFA Today. Hi.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you.
Sure.
First off, I just was listening on the line, and I agree with what you said wholeheartedly. And personal responsibility is not a trait of Americans anymore. And I thought you said when you were talking about the crime and the rape and the things that are happening in the border states that you weren't quite sure why. Did you say that?
I may have. What did it jog in your head?
What it jogged in my head was several years back there was a survey done, a questionnaire on our college campuses across our nation about 2 young men that if they could get away, if they thought that they were guaranteed to get away with rape, would they do it? And it was overwhelmingly yes. And so basically what this is not very difficult to understand among Christians is that sin is tempting, it's enticing,
sure.
And we live in Satan's realm. He has a lot of power here. And
so if you take away the physical accountability of law enforcement or punishment for it, then you entice it even more, is what you're saying.
And just not just that, but just the fact that they are here, they are like ghosts here. We don't know they're here. We don't know their name. We don't know anything. The chances of people being caught because they are in this country with no identity is a carte blanche.
Yeah.
To do these things.
And I want to be careful to say that very few illegal immigrants do what because there are illegal immigrants in every major city, every major urban center in the country. They're all over the country. But the problem with the violent crime, particularly the amount of violent crime that expresses itself in kidnapping, rape, and murder, is particularly heavy along the border states by illegal immigrants, and that's why it won't surprise me if this turns out that this guy was in fact an illegal immigrant. It just kind of fits the profile of what happens in that area of the country. But I agree with you, Margaret, and thank you for thinking clearly about it. We should have some degree of physical accountability for crimes that are this dangerous and evil. And, by not knowing who people are, that encourages the other side. Got a lot more calls that want to weigh in on what's happened here. 888-589-8840. We take your calls next as we continue on AFA Today. I'm Calvin McCullough.